Have you ever made a decision so fast that you've regretted it almost immediately? Sometimes it turns out to be a great call. Most of the time, it turns out to be absolute chaos. Hi friends, I'm Jerry, and today I want to talk about impulsive decisions. The ones that feel right in the moment, but then leave you scrambling later. How I learned to tell the difference between a great gut instinct and a knee-jerking reaction. So next time you're going to make a snap decision, ask yourself, is this my gut talking and my intuition, or is this just fear and tiredness in disguise? I have made many impulsive decisions throughout my career, some positive and some negative, and a lot of them were reactive due to my emotional states at the time. Reflecting back, I realized that some of the choices that I made, I didn't have to go in with an all or nothing thinking attitude, but rather I needed to take a break, or I needed to do less, or I needed to put a strategy in place to support me during the challenging times. But other times, due to time and energy constraints, or wanting to move forward with something bigger, I've realized now that they were good choices to make. But at the time, I wasn't making choices with any real decision journaling. I was making impulsive choices based on my energy at the time. And this challenge is understanding whether you're making a decisive choice or an emotional choice in that moment, but when your emotions are running high. And these impulsive decisions did leave me questioning my judgment. I thought, was I terrible at making decisions, or was something else going on at the time? And there really is two different approaches to decision making. One approach is trusting your gut and deciding quickly. There is certain freedom in making a fast decision and moving on. I'd like to say it's like taking a photo but not checking all your settings, yet capturing something spontaneous and beautiful. But then there's the other approach, which is slowing down and creating structure around the important decisions. And for me, it's like setting up my tripod, checking out my composition, adjusting my settings for the light before I actually shoot. Yes, it takes longer, but I'm more likely to get what it is that I want to capture. These contrasting approaches to decisions seem at odds with each other, fast and slow. But what if they both have something valuable to offer? Because quick decisions work really well for low-stake situations, or when you have strong expertise in that situation, while slow decisions, more deliberate thinking serves you better for high-stake decision making, where your emotions are wrapped around the decision, where it's complicated and emotionally charged. And I have learned that taking your time to make a good decision isn't the waste of time. The waste of time comes when you consistently make the same mistake because you've not learned or taken the time to reflect on past decisions and patterns. But you still need concrete tools to help you make the decisions in high-pressured moments when everything feels really urgent. I would invite you to take a moment to create what's called a decision journal. It's a structured plan that really helps stop impulse decision making. What do I want? Why do I want it? Is this choice going to serve me and help me reach my goal? Or am I making an emotional decision right now because things feel hard, challenging, unfocused? I invite you to try the 10-10 rule when facing a tough decision. Ask yourself, how will I feel about this in 10 minutes, 10 months, in 10 years? And it doesn't have to be deep. You can bullet point it, but getting it down, seeing where you could be in the future might help you make a better decision now, because this creates distance from the immediate emotion and helps you reflect on the bigger picture. Having better decision tools can really be transformative. I still really faced one massive obstacle: taking action on those decisions rather than staying in planning mode. The most important task that I procrastinated on the longest was this idea of becoming the CEO of my own business. The fear of going out there and doing it for myself. It was much easier to work underneath somebody else, which is great if you enjoyed that process. But if you want to branch out but are not branching out due to fear, that's when you can become quite negative and resentful about the thing that you're doing. And that's when you know it's a sign to move on. Because procrastination isn't about poor time management. There's many reasons why we can avoid taking action. And sometimes it's about avoiding uncomfortable emotions. Fear, uncertainty, feeling vulnerable, the imposter syndrome. Because the bigger the task feels, the more overwhelming the emotions can become. For example, the paralysis about building my own business kept me stuck in a position that I didn't want to be in for years. So I had to take a step back and ask myself, what was the reason for not wanting to move forward, grow and develop? What was causing me to avoid taking action? And I discovered 2 competing explanations. One way to look at procrastination is a form of self-protection. Your mind is literally trying to shield you from fear of criticism or fear of failure. Or in my case, it was fear of putting myself out there and maybe finding out I wouldn't be good enough. And then it was safer to stay where I was than to try and become what I wanted to become. Have you ever stood on the edge of a really cold pool or lake or the sea? The longer that you wait to go in, the more intimidating it becomes, and the colder it seems, and the harder it gets. While your friend legs it past you and dive bombs straight into it, overcoming their fear of the outcome immediately. And their pain is over, but yours is still continuous until you take action. And that's the other perspective, is that action precedes motivation. Waiting to feel ready, to feel motivated, to move on to the thing that I needed to do was what kept me stuck. It's a bit like trying to steer a parked car, no matter how much you turn that wheel, until you've turned that engine on and started moving. And the problem wasn't the lack of motivation, it was that the idea of the task was so big, the idea of building my own business and going out there on my own was so vast that it became, in a sense, overwhelming. Therefore, understanding that procrastination was a sense of self-protection, but also to overcome it, you had to create action. It becomes a little bit like a loop. You need to move to then overcome this idea of your self-protection. But the breakthrough happens when you stop seeing them as contradictory. I used to see these as opposing views, either protect yourself or force yourself to act. But the breakthrough comes when you realize that what you're doing is making the task so big that it feels scary and overwhelming, but the solution is actually making it small enough that it doesn't trigger that protection response. The key thing to realize is that momentum is more important than motivation, because once you're in motion, it's so much easier to stay in motion and things start happening because you're moving. This insight can change everything about tackling your next big project. But knowing this and actually using it to break through your initial resistance are 2 different things. Because most people who are self-employed don't have issues with the doing. We have issues with the starting. The good news is there are practical approaches that can help you transform this pattern, creating pathways past that initial wall of resistance. These are thoughtful adjustments about how we frame our tasks and set ourselves up for success. Because the goal isn't to eliminate resistance completely, because it's always going to be there. It's more to set yourself up so that you can work with it more skillfully. One of the first steps that I use is I set a timer for 5 or 10 minutes. And I say to myself, I'm only going to do this thing, if it's challenging, for 5 minutes to get myself moving, get myself in the flow. I don't think about finishing the task or how big the task is. I just think I'm going to initiate it. For example, when I'm scripting and I'm tired and I'm like, it's hard to start going deep dive into scripting, I'm going to do some research for 5 minutes. I'm going to read a book for 10 minutes. I'm going to write a paragraph for 5 minutes to get me moving. And this minimizes the large activity so it doesn't feel so daunting to start. Giving myself small boundaries rather than massive objectives helps take that pressure off. And for bigger projects, especially if you are overwhelmed by the size of it, identify the smallest possible first step. Something so easy it feels ridiculous to put it off. For example, I wanted to open up my shop on Etsy and TikTok, and I have so much to do to populate it, and that made me not want to do it. The easiest thing I could do first was research the name for my shop. Then the next thing was open up a new email account. And then the next thing I did was find one product that I like and upload it. And I am still slowly building on it, because small consistent steps throughout the year really help you compound that larger objective. Because even if something isn't finished, at least you haven't got the worry that you have to start it all from the beginning. Even though I've not finished my shops, and yes, I know they're in the background, I know that I'm going to dedicate a Saturday, 4 hours, maybe 2 hours on a Sunday to accomplish my next little task towards building that side of my business. If this video gave you something to think about, then please subscribe and give me a thumbs up, and let me know in the comments, what impulsive decisions have you made that turned out for good or for bad? And remember, smart decisions aren't always fast, but they're always worth it. As always, friends, keep rising, keep thriving, and I'll see you in the next one.